Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most revered Stoic philosophers and a Roman emperor, is best known for his introspective reflections, which have been passed down to us through his famous work Meditation. He is frequently portrayed as the ideal Stoic, someone who faced the weight of the world with equanimity, composure, and wisdom. Yet, even as a philosopher king, Marcus Aurelius was not immune to error. The central tragedy of his reign, and perhaps the worst mistake he faced, was his handling of the imperial succession, particularly regarding his son Commodus. This decision, in retrospect, led to the rapid decline of Rome's political stability and the eventual downfall of the Roman Empire in its western form. The context: Marcus Aurelius as emperor. Before we delve into his worst mistake, it is crucial to contextualize the life and reign of Marcus Aurelius. Born in 121 CE, Marcus was groomed from an early age to be a ruler. He was adopted by the Emperor Antoninus Pius and grew up with a deep education in Stoic philosophy. This philosophy emphasizes rationality, self-control, and viewing the world with detachment. As a ruler, Marcus Aurelius sought to embody these Stoic principles in his decision-making, seeing his role as emperor not as one of privilege, but as one of duty and responsibility to the people of Rome. Marcus Aurelius came to power in 161 CE, initially co-ruling with his adoptive brother Lucius Verus until Verus's death in 169 CE. Marcus's reign was marked by a series of external and internal crises: border wars with the Germanic tribes in the north, Parthians in the east, and the devastating Antonine Plague that ravaged the empire. Despite these challenges, Marcus Aurelius maintained a reputation for wisdom, compassion, and resilience. The Commodus problem, Marcus's greatest mistake. Historians have often debated whether Marcus Aurelius's decision to elevate his son Commodus as his successor was a grievous mistake. Commodus, born in 161 CE, was still a child when Marcus was involved in managing the Roman Empire's affairs. It was a period when the empire had grown vast and complex, requiring both intellectual and moral fortitude to manage. Marcus's decision to elevate Commodus was not in keeping with the tradition of the five good emperors, in which rulers were selected based on merit, not heredity. This decision defied what might have been Marcus's philosophical ideals about justice and leadership. To understand the gravity of this mistake, it is important to explore the details of Marcus Aurelius's thought process and the possible motivations behind his decision. Number 1. The burden of fatherhood. One of the most immediate challenges Marcus Aurelius faced was reconciling his philosophical duties as an emperor with his personal duties as a father. His writings and meditations show a man acutely aware of his responsibilities to the state. But like any parent, Marcus was likely influenced by his love for his son. Perhaps in the midst of his philosophical musings, Marcus saw Commodus not just as an heir to the throne, but also as an extension of himself. Chance to continue the Antonine legacy. Despite observing some early signs of Commodus's flaws, his tendency toward cruelty, indulgence, and laziness, Marcus may have believed that he could still guide and shape his son. It's possible that Marcus hoped the responsibilities of ruling might mature Commodus, and that the council of experienced advisors could keep him in check. His decision may have been clouded by paternal optimism and a desire to maintain the dynasty that he had carefully stewarded through difficult times. Number 2. The lack of alternatives. Another factor that might have influenced Marcus Aurelius's decision was the lack of viable alternatives to Commodus. By the late 170s, the Roman Empire was embroiled in several military campaigns, particularly against the Germanic tribes on the northern frontier. Marcus spent much of his later reign engaged in these protracted conflicts, far from Rome's political center. Pressures of war and the need to stabilize the empire likely added to the urgency of establishing a clear line of succession. During this time, other potential candidates for the throne, those with the capability and the philosophical disposition to lead Rome wisely, few and far between. By appointing Commodus, Marcus may have believed he was ensuring stability in an otherwise tumultuous era. This desire for continuity, while understandable, failed to account for Commodus's unsuitability as a ruler. Number 3. Philosophical blind spot. Despite his Stoic wisdom, Marcus Aurelius was not immune to the cognitive biases that affect all human beings. In particular, his belief in the inherent rationality of individuals and the possibility for self-improvement might have led him to overestimate his son's potential. As a Stoic, Marcus Aurelius would have believed that individuals have the capacity to act according to reason and to cultivate virtue. Even if Commodus displayed signs of moral weakness, Marcus may have believed that his son could rise above these deficiencies with the right education and experience. Moreover, Marcus's Stoic detachment may have made him blind to the urgency of Commodus's flaws. He may have viewed these shortcomings as temporary or manageable, believing that fate would take its course and that he could accept whatever outcome resulted. However, this optimism was misplaced, and Commodus's reign turned out to be a disaster for the Roman state. Reign of Commodus, study in failure. Upon Marcus Aurelius's death in 880 CE, Commodus ascended to the throne. Almost immediately, it became clear that he was not the ruler his father had hoped for. Commodus's reign, which lasted until his assassination in 192 CE, is characterized by erratic behavior, personal indulgence, and a general disregard for the well-being of the empire. Unlike his father, Commodus lacked philosophical depth and was more interested in spectacle and personal aggrandizement than in the hard work of governance. 1. The abandonment of the northern campaigns. One of Commodus's first major decisions as emperor was to abandon the military campaigns in Germania that Marcus Aurelius had spent years managing. Commodus sought to negotiate a peace treaty with the Germanic tribes, rather than continuing the costly and protracted war. While this decision may have been practical from a short-term perspective, it had long-term consequences for the security of the empire's northern borders. Over time, these regions became more vulnerable to external invasions. This decision also reflected Commodus's broader disinterest in military affairs and in the responsibilities of governing. Unlike his father, who had spent years with the legions on the front lines, Commodus preferred the luxuries of Rome and the entertainment of gladiatorial games. Number 2. Corruption of the Roman administration. Another hallmark of Commodus's reign was the rampant corruption that spread throughout the Roman administration. Under his rule, key positions were sold to the highest bidder, and political intrigue and assassination became the norm. Commodus surrounded himself with sycophants and unscrupulous advisors who were more interested in their own power than in the well-being of the empire. Marcus Aurelius had worked hard to maintain a stable and competent government, but his son's neglect and mismanagement quickly undermined these efforts. The Roman Senate, which had respected Marcus for his wisdom and restraint, grew increasingly hostile toward Commodus, whose capriciousness and cruelty alienated many of Rome's political elites. 3. The cult of Commodus. Perhaps the most notorious aspect of Commodus's reign was his increasing self-identification with divine figures, particularly Hercules. Commodus participated in gladiatorial games himself, fighting in the arena and styling himself as a godlike figure. This behavior, while entertaining to some, deeply offended the Roman elite, who saw it as a gross violation of the dignity of the imperial office. Commodus's descent into megalomania culminated in his declaration that Rome should be renamed Colonia Commodiana, Colony of Commodus, and the Roman people should be referred to as the Commodiani. This egotistical rebranding of the Roman state marked the nadir of his reign, showcasing just how far the empire had fallen from the philosophical and moral ideals that Marcus Aurelius had championed. The long-term consequences of Marcus Aurelius's mistake. The consequences of Marcus Aurelius's decision to elevate Commodus as his successor were not limited to the disastrous reign of Commodus himself. In many ways, this decision set the stage for the eventual decline and fall of the Roman Empire in the West. Commodus's assassination in 192 CE did not resolve the problems he had created. Rather, it led to a period of intense political instability known as the Year of the Five Emperors. The political chaos of this period saw a series of short-lived emperors, each vying for control of the empire. Civil wars and internal power struggles became the norm, weakening the empire's ability to defend itself from external threats. While Rome would experience periods of relative stability in the centuries that followed, the empire never fully recovered from the damage inflicted during the reign of Commodus. Moreover, Marcus Aurelius's decision marked a turning point in the Roman imperial tradition. The era of the 5 good emperors had been characterized by the selection of rulers based on merit and capability, rather than heredity. By breaking with this tradition and choosing his biological son as his successor, Marcus Aurelius inadvertently set a precedent for dynastic succession, which often resulted in unqualified and corrupt rulers ascending to the throne. The Stoic reflection, Marcus Aurelius's own realization. It is tempting to imagine what Marcus Aurelius might have thought about his decision in hindsight. As a Stoic philosopher, Marcus was deeply committed to the idea of accepting one's fate with tranquility and detachment. In meditations, he often reflects on the fleeting nature of life and the importance of living in accordance with reason and virtue. However, it is unclear whether Marcus ever anticipated the full extent of the damage that Commodus's reign would cause. If he had lived to witness the disastrous consequences of his decision, he might have reflected on it with stoic resignation, accepting that even the wisest of individuals are capable of making mistakes. After all, Stoicism teaches that one must accept the things one cannot change, and Marcus Aurelius would have likely applied this principle to his own errors. Nevertheless, the tragedy of Marcus Aurelius's worst mistake serves as a reminder that even the most virtuous and philosophically minded rulers are not infallible. Marcus Aurelius's life and reign continue to inspire readers and thinkers today. But his decision to elevate Commodus stands as a cautionary tale about the dangers of dynastic politics, misplaced optimism, and the difficulty of balancing personal and public responsibility. Conclusion: lessons from Marcus Aurelius's mistake. In exploring the tragedy of Marcus Aurelius and his decision to elevate Commodus, we uncover a complex web of motivations, errors, and consequences. His worst mistake was not simply the result of poor judgment, but was shaped by the pressures of leadership, challenges of fatherhood, and the philosophical ideals that he held dear. For modern readers, the story of Marcus Aurelius and Commodus offers several important lessons. First, it highlights the importance of humility, even in positions of great power. No matter how wise or virtuous a ruler may be, they are still fallible and capable of making grave errors. Second, it underscores the dangers of hereditary succession in leadership. Qualities that make a great ruler are not necessarily passed down through bloodlines, and the elevation of unqualified successors can have disastrous consequences. Finally, Marcus Aurelius's story reminds us of the limits of philosophy when confronted with the complexities of human nature and governance. While Stoicism provided Marcus with a framework for personal resilience and moral clarity, it could not shield him from the harsh realities of political life or the inherent unpredictability of human behavior. In the end, Marcus Aurelius remains one of history's great philosopher kings, but his legacy is forever entwined with the tragedy of his son's reign and the realization that even the greatest of rulers can fall victim to their own worst mistakes.